Hey gamers, Aksu here. Have you been enjoying Hagga Basin? You've heard about the deep desert, but you're not really familiar with how it works? This video is for you. This is the first in a series of videos. In this series, I'm going to share what I've learned about the deep desert, as well as share how I approach deep desert progression. For this first video, I'm simply going to provide an overview of the deep desert itself, describing how the map is organized, new mechanics, treasures, and new risks. Let's get started. The deep desert is a very large map region that's shared by players on your chosen server. This is one of those areas where all of the different sietches converge. As you zone into the deep desert, you're loading into one common space, one deep desert that can accommodate hundreds of players at the same time. The map is large and it's organized into sectors. These are labeled on an alphanumeric grid. First we start along the shield wall, and this is the first row. These rows extend out alphabetically to the north as you go deeper into the desert. Overlaid on that are columns numbered 1 through 9 as you move west to east across the grid. The A row is mostly on top of the shield wall. This is the starter area, and it's safe from sandworms. At launch, this A row was actually the only area that was generally safe from PvP. However, since launch, the PvE desert has been extended to include the entire southern half of the map, with row E being split between PvE and PvP to the north. For many, the deep desert will be considered the end game. Here's where you're going to find materials required for tier 6 upgrades to your base equipment, weapons, armor, and your vehicles. Now, in order to get to the deep desert, you're going to need access to an ornithopter. By flying out of Hagga Basin on any side, you'll find yourself on the world map. The deep desert can be found in the upper northwest corner of this map. As you approach, you're going to see 3 different entrances. These entrances allow you to enter the desert on columns 3, 5, or 8. But remember that you're always going to enter or exit the zone on the shield wall, which is the A row. You'll also find a number of different taxi locations so that you can catch a ride back to Hagga Basin. I've been told that if you die, never respawn directly in Hagga Basin from the deep desert because you risk losing your stuff. It's better to respawn within the deep desert, and then if you've lost your ornithopter, take a taxi back to Hagga Basin instead. What will we find out in the deep desert? First of all, that most important substance, the spice melange. The deep desert will indeed become home to players seeking to harvest large quantities of spice sand. Like Hagga Basin, the deep desert includes testing stations, crash sites, water-sealed caves, many harvestables of all tiers, and of course an abundance of sandworms. And the new stuff to find are things like the tier 6 harvestables, there are tier 6 looted components used in crafting, and then there's tier 6 blueprints for some of the most powerful unique items in the game. And because it's a shared space, there's going to be a more active community than on your individual sietch. And then depending on your server and your personal playstyle, you might find the larger populations to be a good thing, or unfortunately troublesome. It's that time, guys. Please help support the channel by subscribing. You can also leave a like or comment, which really does help with the algorithm. And if you happen to be interested in live gameplay, I do stream weekly on Twitch, and I really do appreciate your support. Thank you so much, guys. As you head to the deep desert, you need to be aware of some new mechanics. And the biggest one of those is the weekly Coriolis Storm. This storm is timed to reach its apex when servers come down for their weekly reset. This is the game mechanic where the deep desert is completely scoured clean and the desert is reshaped on a weekly basis. When this happens, large crash sites, testing stations, lands red control points, even the rock islands themselves will be rearranged with the shifting sands. There is no way to ride out the destructive power of this megastorm. This storm destroys all structures, vehicles, items, players. When the servers go offline, anything remaining in the deep desert is permanently swept away. And what this means is that players must completely move in and out of the deep desert each week. And it's for this reason that anything you build will by definition be temporary. You're going to build a base for storage, for crafting, but at the end of the week before that storm hits, you're going to need to transport all of your treasures, all of your materials, back to the safety of Hagga Basin. And because everything's temporary, a major incentive for building in the deep desert is 50% base construction cost. This means you can set up refineries for half the cost. This helps get to tier 6 faster, all while reducing the weight of transporting materials back and forth to Hagga Basin. Another new mechanic relates to those normal sector sandstorms that we're used to.
Sector weather alert. A large sandstorm is approaching.
Throughout the deep desert, any sandstorm hitting the sector that your base is in will temporarily knock out your base shields. During the shield outage, your base still will have power, so your pentashields will still be in effect and the structure can still protect you. However, all exposed structures and equipment within your base will sustain some damage from the storm. Base shields will restart 5 minutes after the storm passes. And then very importantly, it's during this 5-minute window of time when shields are down that other players have a chance to infiltrate and loot bases, potentially even destroying power generators, attacking the sub-thief console itself. Base raids are only possible in the PvP flagged portions of the deep desert. If you're building in the PvE areas, your base and storage cannot be raided. For harvesting, you're going to be looking for nodes of titanium and stravidium. These are the materials that when refined can be combined into plastanium. Plastanium is the base material for tier 6 gear. The deep desert is famous for its spice sand that can be refined into the spice melange. You'll be able to collect spice sand from small, medium, and large spice fields. In the southern half of the desert, you're only going to be able to find and harvest small spice plumes. As you go further out from the shield wall to the northern desert, that's where you're going to find medium and large spice fields that contain a lot more spice sand. Another thing to be aware of is mob difficulty. If you're fighting NPCs on that A row, it's going to feel like a continuation from Hagga Basin where the difficulty maybe increases a little bit, but all mobs past the A row get significantly more difficult. Some testing stations will include lock-in mechanics where you need to defeat waves of enemies before you're allowed to exit the area. And finally, the deep desert also includes a number of those PvP-enabled control points. They're one of the mechanics for scoring contribution points in the weekly Landsrad. Alright, this overview was the easy part. Check out my next video where I dive into preparing for and first steps into the deep desert. The next guide is targeted for all players, but does especially keep the solo PvE player in mind. Thanks for watching and thank you for your support. See you next time.